Hello everyone and welcome to Get ResponsLIVE. Good evening or good afternoon or good morning to Phil in your case. Welcome to the show. And maybe you're thinking, hey, what a strange green screen, but that is due to the software that had some update. I can't seem to get my background working, so apologies for that. But nevertheless, welcome. And today we are talking about a little bit of DAX, a little bit of MCP, and how you can combine those two. So we'll dive into some demos, but we'll also have a discussion. But we always love it if you join the discussion. So that is not only me and Phil in this case talking, but just ask your questions. What are you currently working on? Maybe say hello where you're watching from, because I think today we have quite an international audience when I see the people that registered. So let me know where you're watching from. It's always cool to see. So if you like this kind of topics, you can support us by giving us a like on LinkedIn or YouTube. And if you want to see more of our content, subscribe. Our YouTube channel is now over 2,000 subscribers. So we finally made it. It was a long ride to get over the 2,000, but now we're there. And one of our regular viewers is here also tonight. Welcome, Mark. So Phil, welcome once again. Maybe before we go into the topic of how you can use MCP to optimize your performance and your DAX, maybe you can introduce yourself shortly to the people that don't know you.
Sure, Jeroen. And thanks for having me on. This is really neat. It's my first opportunity to join this channel. So my name is Phil Seamark. I work for Microsoft on what started as the Power BI Cat team about 7 years ago. Then that morphed now into the Fabric Cat team. I think we're called the Azure Cat team. And my role in this team is as a DAX and data modeling specialist. So I work with large enterprise organizations who are using our products to sort of help them get the best out of our products, but also learn from them how to bring the product in the right way. I really enjoy it. But I kind of got this role because everyone else ran for the hills. They thought, no, DAX too hard, but honestly, it's not. It's my passion, and I really enjoy it. And especially this year, with the new AI tools and new capabilities that we've now got access to, it's a pretty exciting time. And that's what I'm going to share a little bit with you about today. So I gather on this channel you had my colleague Rui talking about the fantastic MCP server to help with semantic modeling that we announced recently at Ignite. Wonderful tool. I'm going to be talking today about something quite similar, but very, very focused on helping people who use it to optimize their DAX. Because quite often you might, my DAX query is running slow. What can I do about it? I could use old-fashioned techniques, go to your internet search engine and look at some many fantastic blogs. Now you've got an additional tool that you can try, and that's what I'm going to show you today. It's 100% free. It's built by Microsoft people. In fact, I worked with a very good colleague, friend of mine, Justin Martin, who's built this and put this out on the Fabric Toolbox. So I'm going to show you how you can get it, how you use it in the session today. But I would love to hear questions, feedback, comments, anything like that. Let's keep this casual and fun.
Exactly. And sometimes if you're watching this and you think, hey, sometimes Phil is a little bit like a picture, it's a little bit the connection. So don't worry, the sound is good. And also when you share the screen, it will be fine. So no worries there. So great that you're going to introduce us into that and what you were doing yourself with it. And maybe to clarify a little bit for people that didn't see the MCP episode, I really invite you to watch it, because I think it was a very cool demo on how you set it up and what you can do with it. And that's the Power BI modeling MCP server. It's a mouthful, but this is another MCP. But what is an MCP? Maybe for the people that don't know.
I think at a very, very high level is we have these very big, powerful language models that are trained on huge amounts of data. They've got lots and lots of parameters, and they are very, very powerful. But a language model on its own still needs some guidance. So when they combine with someone who's actually built essentially a piece of software with a lot of guidance, I guess, when you can combine the two, it helps the language models a lot when they can use the tools in the MCP server, because it doesn't have, it knows exactly what you're trying to do when you're trying to log into Fabric. It goes, okay, all of that's been figured out. I don't have to concentrate on that side of things. I can concentrate on where I can add value. It's the language model on its own is great, and it's amazing capability. But yeah, when you do have a very specialist topical task that you want to do, wrapping that into a tool or set of tools, in this case MCP, which is quite versatile. It can be consumed by quite a few clients in a number of different ways. I'm going to be showing this in Visual Studio Code today, but you could equally consume this in, Claude, desktop, other tools to just connect, converse, have that conversation, and hopefully, even automate what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can ask questions, but it can also make changes. I'm not sure whether the MCP you're going to show can also make changes, because when Rui showed the data modeling MCP, it can make changes in the data model. Or is this more a read-only MCP that you use?
Yeah, the one I'm showing you today is read-only. And that's a very important thing to just be aware of whenever you are working with language models and MCP. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to enable all the tools, and you want to be cautious, because if it can make changes to your model and it makes mistakes, which they do, that might be a hard thing to revert back from. So this particular one I'm showing you today does not make any changes. It's
okay.
100%
Just to be clear, so there are different MCPs. So I'm going to add your screen, Phil, and talk us through it, how you set it up, what you can do with it. So let's see. I hope I see your screen, because I see a blank screen there also in my. I'm going to add it, and let's see if I see something. Maybe you can, otherwise you can. There it is. Yeah, sorry. I was a little bit worried. I didn't see anything, but now I see it. Yeah. So where do you start?
What I have here is a Fabric workspace that just has a couple of artifacts in it. I have a semantic model, and I have a Power BI report. My Power BI report is very simple. It only has one visual. And what we're going to do is go into the report in the web browser, actually, and capture the DAX behind this particular visual, and see if we can optimize it by using this MCP server. But before I go into the report, let's go and get the MCP server. I'll show you where we find that. So up here in the browser, I'm going to go aka.ms fabric toolbox, fabric_toolbox. So that's a also known as Microsoft short link that'll take you to a GitHub repository that a bunch of us on CAT team and people who work in Microsoft close to the CAT team have built a number of tools. So I'm going to dive down into the tools section of this repository. And in here is that MCP server. There's actually a whole bunch of other neat things in here as well. The one we're going to focus on today is appropriately named DAX Performance Tuner MCP server. So this is the one we're going to be using in the session today. However, I also want to call out and recommend you use some of the other many interesting tools, like if you want to do load testing of your Fabric semantic models, there's a free, easy to configure load test tool. I had my own semantic model MCP server that's Python based, which is similar to the one that Rui would have shared recently. It does different things. It does things in a different way. If you want to experiment, you're more than welcome to pull it all down. It's fully open. All the code is there. And there's many other interesting tools in here as well. But let's focus on the DAX Performance Tuner. Okay. So when I go into this folder, there's a very helpful README that describes, it has a video showing Justin, the main contributor to this, showing it off in action. This is a short 10-minute video to help you remember how that actually works, all the prerequisites, and how to download and install it. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can either clone the full repository. Now, if you follow this option, you get the entire repository, including all the other tools, which is growing and it's getting pretty big. Now that's fantastic if you want to play with all the other tools. However, if you're only interested in this MCP server, what you can do is just download the zip file. Now this is what I did yesterday. I'm not going to do it in front of you today because it's only 2 minutes to download, but when you start installing it, it takes 5 or 10 minutes, and that's probably a bit boring in here. if I go up here, the zip file is here. So when you click on the zip file, there's no code to show, but there is the option somewhere up here to download it, I think, download. So that'll just copy it to your local Windows machine. You can extract it. And the very first step you need to do is when you extract it into a new folder is just run setup.bat or setup.ps1. And what that will do is it'll just figure out what are the dependencies, what are the libraries that are needed, the requirements, and it'll install them. If you've got Python already installed on your machine, what it will probably do is create an instance of a Python environment inside the folder that you just created, so that when you're interacting with the MCP server, which does run on a Python host, it has its own private, separate Python environment there. Now, I've done all this. So I downloaded the zip file, I extracted it to a brand new folder, I ran the setup, and then what I did was I opened it in Visual Studio Code. And here's what it looks like. So I have my setup files, which I'm not going to use. I've got the source code, which you can go through and have a bit of a look through.
Maybe if you can zoom in a little bit, Phil, because this.
Oh,
yeah. I'm afraid.
But the folder where you need to start is VS Code. So if you expand the VS Code subfolder, there's one file in here called mcp.json. And that mcp.json can be started by clicking here. So this is how you would run it inside a Visual Studio Code, because what Visual Studio Code gives you is the Copilot chat window. So if I zoom out, what I have over here on the right-hand side is my chat window. So what I need to do is click Start. And now my MCP server is running. That's fantastic. Okay, so I can now start interacting.
By the way, so in the episode we did with Rui, he also showed how you can set up this Copilot, this agent window, because it requires also some installations, I believe, right, beforehand, or is it included in this MCP right away, or you need to install some Copilot to
get the Copilot chat window in Visual Studio Code?
I thought so, but I'm not sure now. Now that you are hesitating, but I think Rui showed us that you had to install some extensions first.
Yeah, I do think there's a GitHub Copilot extension. So if we go Copilot,
well, we don't need to do it now, because when you say when people are asking how can you set it up, check the episode with Rui of 3 weeks ago. There he explains.
Yeah, I would have installed this much earlier in the year, so I've forgotten. And then what it does periodically, it says, hey, there's a new update, please restart Visual Studio Code to get the latest update.
I think this is the one.
Now,
correct.
One thing I'll point out though is that as a Microsoft employee, I'm lucky enough that I get covered by our enterprise agreement. So when I start Visual Studio Code and I have my Copilot window down here, I've got access to a bunch of premium models. So this might not appear when you open Visual Studio Code. What can happen is if you sign up in GitHub Copilot, there are a number of plans. I think there's a Pro plan, there's a Pro Plus plan, maybe Enterprise plan. Now each plan has a different price. But might come with different models, but also it might give you a certain quota per month. Now, some of the cheaper plans might mean you don't get to use it very much before you max out your plan. Some of the more expensive plans give you, a lot more Copilot use. So just be aware of that and go to the GitHub Copilot just to learn about how the pricing is and the model. Fortunately for me, I'm lucky. I don't need to worry about that. It is good.
You don't have GPT 5.2 yet, which is also almost due, I believe. That would be nice if I saw that 5.2, but that's not yet there.
And down here, this icon here on the status bar is really useful to click on periodically, because what I can see as an example is that I get a certain number of premium requests per month. They reset at the start of each calendar month. So for me in New Zealand today is the 12th of December. So I'm not even halfway through, but fortunately I'm not even halfway through my premium request. So I'm tracking nicely.
You're on track.
I always fully intend to maximize my premium credits. So today, what we're doing is we're going to be combining the MCP server that we've just downloaded from GitHub with a language model. And I can choose which language model I want. I can use one of the free ones, or I can use one of the premium ones. What I find is that premium ones are typically much better at figuring out what the MCP server is and does and how to interact with it. Sometimes when you're on one of the smaller language models and you ask it even a very specific prompt, it might not necessarily identify one of the tools that are available in the MCP server. So you might have to iterate, but certainly the premium ones are pretty good, and they're just getting better all the time. So I just want to call out that I will use the very, very good Claude Opus 4.5. And, you know, Visual Studio Code has the ability for you to go to manage models and put in a key. Maybe you've purchased a language model from one of them, you know, Google or Grok or Anthropic, etc. There are other ways that you can get this in. So we have an MCP server running. I want to optimize some DAX. So let's go back to my report that I showed you earlier and capture some DAX that we want to optimize. So what I'm going to do is go into the report, and we're going to tell the MCP server to connect to the semantic model once we have some DAX to optimize. And this is slow. This is taking 5 or 6 seconds, etc. This is an example of a DAX query that I want to optimize. But how do I get to the DAX? Well, the performance analyzer, which has always been in Power BI desktop, has been the way to do it. But maybe you're not on a Windows machine, which you probably need for Visual Studio Code anyway. But to get to the performance analyzer, we have to be in edit mode. So there's no ability to get access to that because it's an authoring function. So if we go into edit mode, and I think if I click on the view button, view down here at the bottom. So this is relatively new. Yeah. And when I click on Performance Analyzer, it should look and feel very, well, it's the same as what we're used to in Power BI Desktop if you've used this. So we can start a trace, start recording.
It was not there before, right? In the servers online.
It's recent. It's only been there for a month or two, so it's quite new. Okay, so I'm recording now, and when I move my mouse over an individual visual here, in the header for the visual, there's a little icon that only appears when I'm recording a performance analyzer trace called Analyze This Visual. So I'm going to click it. It's going to pretty much rerun the query. Now, this is quite quick on the rerun, probably taking advantage of some visual caching. And the MCP server takes care of that. That's going to make sure when we're optimizing, it doesn't cheat, because I expect this to take about 5 to 6 seconds. So we can copy that query. So I've got that in my buffer. And then if we come over here, and what I'm going to do is paste in a prompt. And my prompt, what I'm going to ask my MCP server to do is optimize this query. My data set is called this, and my workspace is called this. So I'm doing this just to speed things up. But I also need to put the query in. And the query that we just captured in my copy buffer looks like this. Okay, there's a define, there's a summarize columns. And the summarize columns, interestingly, is calling a measure called test. We don't see the test in the expression.
Can you zoom in, Phil, please, into the...
Absolutely.
The code?
I might go the other one. So 4. Okay. So the query we are asking it to optimize starts with define. This is what we've captured from the visual. Summarize columns is the meat of every single visual practically from Power BI Desktop. But we're calling a measure called test. Now, we don't see the DAX expression here in the DAX that we've captured in Performance Analyzer. So there's not a lot here to actually optimize. What we're trying to optimize is what is inside the measure. But the good news is the MCP server expands that. Okay. But before I issue this prompt, what I'm going to do is jump over to good old-fashioned SQL Server Management Studio Profiler. And Profiler is a free tool. We've had it for years. You've always been able to connect to database engines, analysis services, Power BI, and run a trace. And in fact, here it's captured 2 two query events that have hit the semantic model, because I'm tracing the semantic model in that workspace. So here's when I opened that page the first time, and it looks like here is when I reran the query with Performance Analyzer. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm just emptying my profiler trace so that when we kick this off, we can see what the MCP server is doing. So I'll reduce the size of my VS Studio Code, park that over there and make it a bit bigger. And let's kick this off, and I'll explain what's going on. So what should hopefully happen is the language model will go, all right, you've asked me to connect to a specific semantic model in a specific workspace. I don't have access, so we need to log in. So what I'm expecting it to do is identify the tool in the MCP server that handles authentication. Now, if it's connecting to local Power BI desktop, which it can do, this is pretty straightforward. But here, what it's going to do is it's popping up in a browser in another window. I'm getting that classic, who do you want to log in as, and which may be MFA, for example. And I need to make sure I click the right one. Wonderful. So that's authenticating. And I'm getting a message saying, authentication completed. You can close this window now. Okay. So that's smart. So the language model has...
And does that require, Phil, that you prompt it in a certain way, or is the LLM smart enough that it knows, oh, this is about a data model or a...
It's
What?
It's pretty smart. No, you don't have to prompt it pretty quick in a specific way, and it depends on the language model. Like if you just said log into Fabric, it would probably be smart enough to pop up an authentication window and maybe even provide you with a list of workspaces that you've got visibility on. So here we can see it's actually issuing some activity. So the MCP server is probably clearing some cache. It's running an evaluate one, and it's looking at things like info tables and info columns and info measures, for example. And here what we can see is we're running the query for the first time. Now it should run this query 3 times, because what it's going to do before it changes anything is it wants to establish a baseline. And the query that we asked it to optimize really looks like this part. But what the MCP server has done is it knows we're talking to a measure called test, and it's gone into the definition of the model and it's found what that measure looks like, and it's expanded it to put here. And what we can see is that the first iteration of that query, and it's going to do this 3 times, it took 5.8 seconds, but used 81 seconds of server.
You can zoom in sometimes, Phil, because the screen's a little bit small.
Should be coming in.
Yeah.
So the first time it ran, the query took 5.8 seconds of duration, elapsed time, but it took 81 seconds of server compute. That's quite a lot. You know, if you're running this in a high concurrency situation, you can max out your capacity pretty quickly. And I'm going to zoom in again. And what we can see is it's run it 3 times. We're seeing a really consistent baseline. It's clearing the cache each time as well, so that the subsequent runs aren't getting the benefit and you know, producing artificially fast results.
I think the screen is a little bit stuck at the moment, but that gives me the opportunity to, if you're watching this, just ask your questions and maybe you have some use cases yourself that you want to know about, whether that is also possible. Feel free to ask them. There are no stupid questions. We're here to, Phil is here to answer them. I don't know.
But we're very hands-off at this point. You know, we have given it just a single prompt, and that prompt did include the name of the model, the workspace, and the DAX query that we wanted to optimize. And if you want, I can reduce the resolution to my screen. That could possibly help. I'm not.
Yeah, shall we try it? Yeah, we can try it.
Okay, I can do that on the fly.
I think because the screen doesn't move at the moment, so now it is moving. So yeah, I also see that it's now moving again, so that's nice. If you can maybe lower it a little bit, maybe that helps. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think this is much better. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So if I scroll back up the chat a little, if it's letting me. Okay. Oh, so here's what I've asked it to do, optimize this DAX query. So it connected to the data set, it prepared for optimization. So it ran some baseline tests. And then what it's come up with is it's gone into its own knowledge base and looked for some genuine alternative ways that the same query could be written, and it's testing those out. So what it found was on the original baseline, the total time was roughly, well, the last time it actually ran it 4 times in this case, 5.8 seconds. Most of that time was in the storage engine. There were 14 storage engine queries, but in total, we used nearly 80 seconds of server compute because of, these tasks get spread across multiple cores. So it's quite heavy.
For one visual.
For one visual, which is all right when you're in single user mode, but when there's a bunch of you all trying to open this report at the same time, that's a problem. So it's described what it's found. Now, here's where the language model is using MCP guidance to look at its knowledge base, go to MS Learn articles, etc., and come up with some alternatives. And here, it's issuing alternative versions. And we can already see that the different versions, this one's actually running 3 times, but it's not the same query as we have over there. It's running it 3 times, and it's found that probably the average is, 3.7 seconds, nearly half the compute. So we're winning. We're not down to like sub-second, but it's still running, and it's running it again. And you wouldn't normally have your profiler trace going. I just wanted to have the profiler trace ticking over so you can see exactly how the MCP server is going about establishing that baseline, clearing the cache, making sure you're getting consistent results. And the fact that this little circle down here is, you've got the circle and the square, shows that the chat is still going. It hasn't actually finished. It's actually telling me here, maybe let's try a different approach. Let's try using summarized columns to pre-calculate. So it's still not satisfied that we've done the best job.
It's interesting, and I think that is really an advancement that was made this year, that it is looking at results and then continuing or trying out things, instead of that you have to prompt it every time, which was maybe last year the case. Now it keeps on trying, testing, and you see that it is improving and improving, because now it's 1.8.
And you can control that. You can actually give your language model guidance about how often it wants you to interact. Sometimes you want to be careful, and you do want to interact quite regularly. I quite often run what we call YOLO mode, you only live once mode, where I can fill out a list of to-do items and just say, don't bug me, go and do the work, run some test scripts. If the test scripts fail, linger on those and fix them until they all pass, and then carry on through the to-do list.
I will get a cup of coffee, and when I return,
come back and I'll actually review where you're up to. So this is chugging away.
But now it's down to 1.8, Phil. So it's
exactly
new improvement
3 times. And if I jump between here and here, you'll see that the text is definitely changing. And one of the things that is baked into the MCP server is also to check the results as well, to make sure that from our baseline up here, whatever rows and columns and values got produced here also get matched.
That the result is the same, you mean? So in the back end, it is also checking the result.
Yes, some people care about things like that. So
it seems like it. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. But where do you see that it tests whether the result is the same? Do you see that also somewhere in the chat or somewhere else? Or
all 12 rows matched exactly with the baseline results, so it's telling us there the equivalence. So here we've got the a nice summary that I'm not going to read through line by line here, but the optimization was successful. Here's where we started. Here's where we finished, for example. Significantly better. The results were the same. Here's the original measure, and here's the optimized measure. Now let's go take this over to DAX Studio, because I want to take advantage of the time we've got to show some pretty neat things that I've also been working on over in DAX Studio, which will come out shortly. So
this is already also quite awesome that it can work in this way. So, but indeed, let's continue in DAX Studio, because you said that you were working on some new improvements there, right? And what's your role in this then? Is it open for everyone to develop on, or do you have an active role in the development of DAX Studio? What is your involvement in DAX Studio?
The DAX Studio is a open source tool, has always been. So anyone is welcome to create a fork of the code and make modifications as an open project. It's primarily, the main contributor has been Darren Goswell, a colleague of mine who works on my team. He's based in Australia. Yeah. And usually what happens is I'm using the DAX Studio heavily. It's a fantastic product. And I'll bug him and say, hey, can you add line numbers to here? And can you add this feature and this feature? Yeah. And I think Marco does the same thing. And Darren's always really good, sometimes even adding features in the same day.
Yeah.
But now with these language models, I can actually start contributing and making adding features and using the lifecycle management application lifecycle management process to just make sure these things get added in a nice way. So
nice that you're using AI for that also, and thank you Jeroen, for letting us know that it is incredible that you like it. So thank you for sharing that. We always appreciate it. So I'll add your screen again, and so we're now in DAX Studio.
Yep, and we should be connected to the model. So if I run the simple hello world, we get a result, and we probably see hello world over here, on the trace that I've got running against the server. So the first thing we want to do is, here's the DAX query. But normally when I come to DAX Studio, I connect to the model, and I might be quite unfamiliar with the model. So, and I'm quite a visual person. I like to get a bit of a diagram about how these things all hang together. So what you will get shortly is a simple model diagram. So on the advanced tab, this is a preview feature, so you'll have to go and enable the preview feature when you get that, is we can click on model diagram and move this up, and we can actually see what the model looks like. And we can move this around and do some really neat things. We can
this is something new, Phil.
Sorry?
This is a new feature that
yes,
will be added. Then I have a nice clip with World Premiere. I don't.
Absolutely. This is the first time.
Can I use it now? Is this a World Premiere for DAX Studio?
If you download my fork of DAX Studio, you can actually get this up and running today if you wanted to.
But I mean, you did it. It has not been shared often in the world that this feature is coming to DAX Studio, or is it? Or is it already?
I think I had hinted on Twitter and maybe suggested something, but yeah, this is actually the first time.
I still want to run my clip because I have a special clip for that with World Premiere. So I don't want.
You can absolutely.
You can I use it? I'll just use it. Okay, 1 second.
World Premiere.
Yeah,
fantastic.
It's been a long time ago that I could use it. So what can you do? It looks very nice. So if you right away,
so you can see the direction that filters are going in, that this is one-to-many. It's a very clean model. We have all the column names. We can hover over columns and get information about individual columns and the tables, for example. We can click a table over here and say, let's just highlight the path between the tables. Let's maybe click some tables here and move it around. Maybe we can hide non-selected tables. We can show all tables, for example. I like the fact that this little arrow is very, it moves around when you zoom in, zoom out. You can add annotations.
I like that you can select multiple tables with control. I assume that you can move multiple tables at one time. That will be nice in Power BI also.
We can jump to the metadata pane, and if you actually run the VertiPack Analyzer, if you click View Metrics, and that goes and gets the cardinalities and stats, for example, you're probably used to seeing this view if you've studied your model, for example, to get size and cardinality. For example, I'm not sure. Oh, this is a 2 gig model. I forgot. This might take a minute or two, but that's okay.
No problem.
We can jump back to the model diagram and see what else is we can do here. And it remembers, actually, we persist the model layout against the connection string, so that if I close and reopen DAX Studio and it's complex and I've got my tables organized in a way that I like, it will remember. Okay, so VertiPack Analyzer is complete. So what we can now see is This table has 2.4 gig of data in size. We've got the size information.
One second, Phil, because the image is a little bit behind the audio, I notice.
Oh,
So
sorry.
we'll wait for it to catch up, because in the sharing of the screen, it seems to be in the data model.
Hopefully you can see some numbers on the columns. I can see that these are all import tables.
Strange,
we can show cardinality information, how many unique values are in each column. So there's quite a bit here that hopefully will be useful to someone who's working on DAX. But let's go back to run this DAX query, because I do have another feature, World Premiere, that we can show you shortly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on server timings, which is a similar trace to Performance Analyzer, but it gives you a detailed breakdown about what's going on inside the query. And this is my 5-second query. And I'm going to make sure that when the server timings trace is ready to go, that I have the clear on cache button run. So, because remember, my MCP server doesn't change the model. All it's doing is figuring out some alternative DAX, and it's still on me to add that to the model. I have not done that yet. So this is in the original form. So I'm going to click the run button, and what I'm expecting this query to do is, first of all, clear the cache, and secondly, take about 5 to 6 seconds to produce a result set. And over on server timings, we can see what went on, what was going on. We've got 14 queries, 80 seconds of server timings, etc. So this is using the original version. What I can do is come to here and get the optimized version. In fact, I'll copy that.
Yeah.
And in DAX Studio, I know the measure is called test, and I can right click on here. This is a feature that Rui added many years ago. And in the context window that pops up, define dependent measures, it's going to bring into my query editor the current definition of that model. It's just connecting to the server and grabbing that. What I'm expecting to see is the text should jump down. That's great. All right, so what's happening now is when I run my DAX query, down here when it says run this measure here, it's going to run the original version of the measure, which is what we've just done. But I'm going to replace this. I'm going to take this out. Maybe I'll comment it all and put the updated version of the measure in. And how many rows did we get? We got 12 rows with some numbers. Okay, I've still got my server timings running. So if I rerun this now, hopefully I've done my cut and paste nicely. There we go. It's only taken 2.6 seconds in elapsed time. If we look at server timings, we can see it's definitely along the lines of what we saw on the MCP server. But we're running in DAX Studio now. We can see the before and after. And when I'm happy, when I'm ready, I can then go and either introduce this as a new measure alongside the existing original to do more testing, or I could just simply overwrite that and do my deploy, etc. But I mentioned another feature in DAX Studio that I've added, and this is the one that's probably of more interest to someone like myself or any of the pro developers in the audience. So similar diagram to the model, but this next diagram focuses just on the query we just ran, the server timing dependencies. So here, once you've successfully run a server timings, there's a new button here called dependencies. So that doesn't exist in Tabular Editor if you get the public release version today, but will come shortly. When we click on dependencies, what this is going to do is bring up a diagram that only focus on the columns and tables that are relevant and used and touched in any way by this particular query. Now, I might have a semantic model with 100 tables, and each table has 20 or 30 columns, but my query might only touch 3 or 4 tables and only a couple of columns. And what I'll do is I'll rerun this VertiPack Analyzer, view metrics, and come back to storage and dependencies. Okay, because that'll actually put some useful information in here. Like the other view, I can move these around, zoom in, zoom out, and I I can see a lot of really useful information here. Like I can see that there are 7 storage engine queries. They're spread across 3 tables. These are the columns from those tables that are relevant. There's a legend down here that's telling me that we are filtering by day of week number, but we're not grouping or selecting by it. The date column in here is used as a key column, and you can see the hovering and the highlighting where they connect to on either side of the relationship. Over here we are grouping by brand or selecting by brand. Well, it's actually grouping. We're filtering by brand, and the other column is the relationship key. And I can see how big the relationship key, like how much data did we have to scan to go and make use of this. I can flick between hits and CPU to get different views on the heat map, because sometimes I'm more interested in the number of hits, the number of times a column or table turns up in a storage engine event, especially in DQ scenarios, for example.
What do the colors indicate, Phil? Because I've seen it's changing from green to yellow to red. What does that indicate? Is that something?
Yeah. So up here on the toolbar, when I select CPU over here,
yes.
Then the toolbar, the column colors are going to give you an emphasis about which tables are consuming the most compute. Now, this is a relatively straightforward query, but I might have lots and lots of fact tables, and I want to see if 98% of the compute's all coming from one fact table, and then what are the size of the columns being used for scanning, filtering, grouping by, what aggregates are on. I think there's not actually even an aggregate on here. There should be an aggregate here. So it's something for me to just have a look at. But if you click on a table, you get this extra detail over here, describing in much more detail what's going on with that particular table. So the sales table, there's a lot more information about how that's getting used in this query, for example. If I click on a column, it's telling me quite a lot of detail about how this column got used in that query. So here we can see on the store key column where there's a filter. Here with the filter values, there was 74 in total, 11 distinct values. I'll need to just double check what's going on there. But and that the store key column is quite small in terms of bytes in this particular model.
So it's interesting to see, Phil, that you are combining. You started with the MCP to improve the performance, but in DAX Studio you can look at it in even more detail. So it's a nice partnership with MCP and with the new functionalities in DAX Studio. You can really deep dive into tuning the performance, because we're quite fast.
Up until today, we get this. We've had this for a while, and Darren has done a wonderful job improving this. I think Marco's also formatted the XM SQL to make it much more readable. I think if I drop back to raw, you can see what it really looks like. This is what the engine's producing, but DAX Studio does a fantastic job cleaning it up to something much more readable. And I could go through these one by one to see exactly how the query is going about getting the data that it's needed. And they provide really big clues as to why this query is taking the time it takes, and does allow me to focus on what are the columns that are relevant for this query, and how big are these columns, and how are they being used, and what are some of the alternatives that we can do. So now this becomes quite a powerful additional tool to sort of allow you to hopefully focus on the key problem and not spend too much time doing more tedious stuff, when you're trying to, especially more complex queries as well. So hopefully you enjoy this.
Yeah, this was a relatively simple one still, but imagine if you have a much larger model and a lot of measures. It really makes the difference if you can improve it 4 times like you had now.
So we're nearly at
Phil, we're close to the end of the episode, unfortunately. So thank you very much for sharing this. And I hope that everyone who is watching will try it out. So I see that Fernando is also already thanking you for this session. So I hope that
like I say,
Yeah.
To close the gap, the task now is to take this code and put it into the model when you're ready. And you could rerun it. You can go spend more time thinking about it, and then
It's an
maybe it might
iterative
become-
process.
Mhm.
You keep continuing to improve it and learn from it also. And Fernando is asking also, when will we be able to see and use this functionality in DAX Studio?
The next time it gets released should include the 2 new diagrams that I have edited. Now, there are what we do want to do is just make sure that the styling is consistent with the rest of DAX Studio. So, I've come up with some icons and stuff. So we might just spend a little bit of time making sure that they look better. Because for those familiar with DAX Studio, when version 2 got released, it did get a nice makeover. So let's make sure that's there. Otherwise, if you want to get it today, if you're really impatient, DM me, ping me, and I can show you how you can fork my public repo, download it, build it, and you can play with it and even give feedback. So anyway, thank you.
That's very
Jeroen.
nice.
And
I see a lot of people thanking you for sharing this knowledge and for the inspiration. So Adele, also thank you for your nice words. So it's indeed nice international audience. So that's good. Thank you all for watching. Next week we're also back. I think it's going to be the last episode of this year because I'm not going to do it at Christmas and New Year's Day. There are limits. But next week it is a Dutch episode, but especially for you, I put it in mostly in English. We're going to be talking about something completely different. We're going to be talking about Excel. Why not? Because still a lot of people use Excel. And we thought it would be nice when we're close to the year-end closing and a lot of people are in stress in January to get it all finished in time, to give you some nice tips in Excel to speed it up. Because I've done it myself also for about 10 years. I know it can be stressful. So maybe these tips will help you to speed it up a little bit. So next week we'll be discussing that together with Gert. Thank you again, Phil, for joining. Have a nice day. Have a nice Friday. It's already Friday there. And I hope to maybe see you back next year for another nice session. So thank you.
Cool. All right. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.